that something isn't right with this argument. Second, welfare rights undermine the relationship between justice and rights. And here's a little bit more history. We can talk about two different senses of the word right, and many European languages have this distinction. I don't know about the Malay or other languages, but the word right can have different meanings. Objective right, as it is called, refers to what ought to be done. We say it was the right thing to do. She did the right thing. That's called objective right. But subjective right refers to your right to do something, to receive something, to not have something done to you. So we say she did the right thing, but it was her right not to do it. Right? That's a different sense of right. He had a right to be paid that money is not the same as it was right that he be paid the money. So two different statements. Right? Are they connected? Well, liberalism connects those two in an interesting way. So we start with Aristotle, theorist of objective right. He defined justice, in Greek dikaiosune, is that habit which makes men apt to do just things, which causes them to act justly, to wish what is just, to focus on the objective status of what's right. The great Roman lawyer Ulpian has a different definition of right. Justice is a steady and enduring will to render unto everyone his right. Here the Latin term is ius, I-U-S. The basic principles of right are to live honorably, not to harm another person, and to render to each his own. To give to people what is their right. Now, there's an interesting development in European political thought. A very great thinker named Thomas Aquinas, you may be acquainted with. Thomas is known for something he did, very important. He was influenced by especially Ibn Rushd, or Averroes, had a huge impact on Thomas Aquinas. He really introduced him to the systematic study of Aristotle, and he wrestled with the texts and the arguments of Ibn Rushd through his life. What Ibn Rushd was doing was reconciling Islam with science and philosophy as a kind of an enterprise, if you will, and arguing that we can know things because of faith and the revelation of the Prophet. We can also know the same truth through the human mind, because God created the world such that it could be comprehended by the human mind. So we have two avenues. And this corresponds to what is happening among the Christians, especially those influenced by the Arabic philosophers, such as Ibn Sina and Ibn Rushd and others, that they wanted to say that Christian faith teaches you something, but science will teach you that also, that there's no contradiction. There's no two truths about the world. There's only one truth about the world, and you could know it through faith or you could know it through reason. And Thomas Aquinas is the figure most associated with this tendency in Christianity. There's the Arabic philosophers do this for the Islamic world. Maimonides does it for the Jews in his Guide for the Perplexed. Thomas Aquinas for the Christians. But the other thing that he does is to reconcile it also with the Roman law, which had been recently rediscovered in Europe. So it's philosophy or science, Christianity, and Roman law. And in this case, he wants to reconcile Roman law with philosophy. So we'll set aside the Christianity element. And he points out, he says Aristotle must always be right. He's the philosopher. He calls him the philosopher has said. So that must be right. But the Roman law says something different. We have a problem. How to reconcile them? And he says we do it if we understand them correctly. And he quotes here the philosopher, the one I just quoted, and then the Digest of Justinian, the quotation from the lawyer Ulpian, who says justice is giving to each his right, subjective right. He says the proper matter of justice consists of those things that belong to our intercourse or business with other men. The act of justice in relation to its proper matter and object is indicated in the words, a man is said to be just because he respects the rights of others. Now this is actually more significant than you might think. What it means is that, if I can find the pen here, these two concepts of rights are connected between objective right or justice and subjective right or rights. The two are made coordinate. The way we get objective justice or right is by respecting the rights of persons. In a way, rights are a justice-creating machine. When rights are respected, the outcome will be just. Right? So if we have a just allocation of resources and people engage in trade that's voluntary, there's no stealing, it's agreement, each act is just, the outcome will be just. And one of the reasons is no human mind can know what is the just ordering for all of society. It's not possible. It's too complicated. What is the best person in the world to own this pen? Anyone know? I don't have a clue. If you said, Tom, search the world for the most appropriate person to own this, I couldn't answer. But what I can know is who has a right to it. That's easy to understand. In this case, it's the Malaysia Think Tank has the right to this, and they give me permission to use it. So that it's like in the case of socialism, Ludwig von Mises argued socialism cannot solve the problem of efficient allocation. Only the price system of the market economy. I can't know the best use of this device in the world. What I can know is the price someone would offer me for it. And that helps us to allocate things to their most highly valued use. As John Locke pointed out, if rights don't conflict, duties don't conflict. I mean, I'm going to go a little bit longer on this, if that's okay, to get into the core of this argument. There's a quotation from Immanuel Kant that we can go over quickly, that justice or right is the sum total of those conditions within which the will of one person can be reconciled with the will of another in accordance with the universal law of freedom. That justice is when all of us have equal rights, is a just social order. Now, welfare rights, however, break this connection right here between objective and subjective rights. It's no longer the case that exercising your rights will yield a just social order. The welfare rights perspective, or the socialist view, is these two are no longer connected. They deny this connection. This is a very deep and fundamental disagreement between liberals and socialists on the nature of justice and what the socialists call social justice. And you'll notice they don't call it justice, which tells you when they call it social justice, they mean something other than justice. Liberals are concerned about justice. If you distinguish it, it means you want something other than justice. What they're getting at is they think that when we all act justly, the outcome will not be just. So we need to have this new concept called social justice, which will punish people for having acted justly by taxing them or taking away their resources or assets. That you will undermine the connection between justice in behavior and justice as a social outcome. Now, Joseph Raz, a philosopher at Oxford, put it very neatly. He defines a right as an interest strong enough to hold another person under a duty. So if I have an interest, you have a duty. Right? They're very different from, again, the classical liberal perspective. Duties are generated by interests of other people. Interests conflict all the time. Anytime two people are in love with a third person, and under a system of monogamy where you only get to marry one of those first two people will be unhappy, at least one. Right? If that person marries A, then B will be unhappy. If it marries B, A will be unhappy. And we can see that throughout life. Our interests often conflict. If they conflict, according to Raz's theory, our duties and obligations will conflict also, and we will fight here. That's the best image I could come up with of a fight.